In terms of trying to figure out how to motivate students, I think one of the things you need to do initially is to determine what the function of their lack of engagement really is. So, what's the function of the behavior? What's the function of the behavior? What's the function of the behavior? And that's something that I say a lot to parents and teachers with whom I work. And so if you do have students who just aren't motivated, they refuse to follow requests, they refuse to engage in activities, you need to figure out why that is. Is it a social thing and it's, well, my friends aren't doing work, so I'm not going to work too? Is it something that varies by subject? Maybe there are particular subjects that they don't want to do. Is it something about the classroom environment or your own teaching style? And the more you can learn about the function of the behavior itself, the more you can then sort of intervene. So, for example, if you have a student who doesn't engage during reading. Maybe that student struggles with reading. Do they have to read out loud? Maybe that student has some social anxiety. So there could be various reasons why students don't engage, but the more you can do some of your own assessment to figure out why that is, the better you'll be able to intervene. So, collect some data, pay attention to when students are motivated and when they're not motivated. What factors might be contributing to them being more motivated during other times of the day or in other classes? Check with your colleagues, fellow teachers. How do they act in your class? How do they work in your class? What tends to motivate them? And the more information you can collect, the more data you can collect, the better you should be able to then figure out what you can use to reinforce their on-task behavior or get them to engage.
One of the most important things that teachers can do is to try to figure out what's going on with the student. So sometimes we as teachers, and I know for myself, even as somebody who teaches college students, when students turn in things late or don't come to class, I can sometimes take that personally. And I really have to remind myself that I am not the most important thing in their life. School is not necessarily the most important thing in their life, but I want to show them that I want them to be in the classroom. I think that class is not as good if I don't have everybody there participating, and I care about them, and I want them to be able to have as much information as they possibly can so they can have as many choices as they want after they've been in my classroom. And I think that that's the same at any level of schooling. And so I always want to start out with trying to figure out what's going on rather than saying, hey, you weren't in class, you get docked participation points for that, or you might not get as good of a grade. I always want to lead with, I noticed you weren't in class. What was going on? Is everything okay? I want students to know that we're on the same team, that it's not a sense of a teacher is your adversary and a teacher is just out to get you or out to trick you. So it's really important that it's seen as a sense of let's problem solve together about why you're not able to make it to class. Why aren't you getting your homework done? Let's figure out what's going on if you didn't do as well as you would have liked to have done on that test. So when I work with my clients, sometimes I'll say things like, some of the other students that I've worked with have struggled with these things. Are any of those problems true for you? So that I am taking a little bit of the burden off of being like accusatory towards them, or putting them on the spot or making them feel a little bit defensive, so that I'm making it seem to them, which is true, that a lot of students struggle with the same thing. And then I will also talk to them about there are a lot of different strategies, and not all strategies work for all students, but let's sit down together. Let's actually write down some of the obstacles that you face, and then let's write down so that you have a toolbox full of solutions when you face those obstacles. So one of the things that's really important for students to have is solutions in in the moment. So as they're facing a particular problem, things like procrastination or not having the resources that they need, not having their textbook at home, not having access to Wi-Fi, getting to the first math problem and not understanding how to do it, I want them to plan ahead for those problems. And number one, that normalizes it a little bit so that they don't shut down right away, so that they don't automatically say, I'm stupid, or I hate my teacher for assigning that, for making me feel stupid, but so that we've anticipated some of those problems and are able to address those with solutions. And then I'll also talk to them about how strategies and solutions are experiments. We try them for a week or two, we see how they go, and the solutions may not be the same for everybody, so we have to figure out what works for you as an individual. No matter how students are doing in the class, it's really important to continue to have high expectations of them, to try to think of every day as a new day to start over. And I also want to make sure that students know why we have high expectations of them. The best way that I've found in terms of explaining it to students is to frame it in terms of having choices in life. I tell students that I want to make sure that they have as many choices as possible. So when they're in middle school, and adolescents in particular tend to be very present focused. So sometimes talking to them about going to college seems to be very, very far away. So sometimes I'll frame it in, you want to make sure that you have choices in terms of the classes that you're going to be in next year, or the choices that you have in high school. And for high school students, I like to frame it as you want to make sure that you have as many choices as possible for what you're going to do after high school. And also just in general, talking to them about the reason why I'll talk to them about my own personal life and say that the reason why I wanted to go to college and then pursue degrees even after going to college was so that I had more choices about the kind of work that I got to do, and even to some extent how much money I get to make and how many times I get to go on vacation. That a lot of times having more education helps you have some more choices in terms of what you want to do in life. And sometimes teachers will talk about saying, you have the choice to write your paper right now, or you can write it during recess. And I think that's something that you want to be really thoughtful about taking away children's time at recess. I think it's really important for them to have downtime, but it also might be important to have them think about, you may want to write your paper at recess, or you may want to get this work done during recess or during lunch or after school, not necessarily in terms of a punishment, but having them be thoughtful about, is it too hard for you to write when the classroom's a little bit more noisy, or when you're distracted by some of your classmates? Is it easier if you have a little bit more private time, or is it easier if you have somebody that can help you with it, that you can bounce ideas off of? A lot of the kids that I work with really get stuck. They don't know how to write the first sentence of a paragraph, or they don't know how to do the first math problem, and sometimes they can feel like asking for help makes them look stupid, especially in front of their friends. Friends are very, very important during the middle school years. And so sometimes taking away the stimulation of friends and the distraction of friends or other people in the classroom can be really helpful to them. And then you're giving them longer term skills in terms of them being able to make decisions about, when I do my work, yes, I do need a little bit of stimulation, so I'm okay doing it in the classroom, or I actually need a lot of silence, so I need to go to the library, or if kids are able, I need to find a quiet place in my home to finish up my work. But all of this really goes to having more of a personal relationship with kids, and it really goes back to figuring out why are they not doing their work? Are they not doing their work because they're overwhelmed? Are they not doing their work because they're thinking about other things that are going on for them outside of the classroom? Are they not doing their work because they don't understand what the directions are? Are they stuck? Or do they just think this is not relevant or important, and you need to have a conversation with them, and you need to talk to them about why they think the work is not relevant or not important? And just taking a few minutes to figure out some of that information will go a long way, not only towards your relationship with the student and back to the idea of them really feeling like you care about them and you're not just out to get them or out to punish them, but it also helps you know the student a little bit better. So to the extent that you have any choice in your lesson plans or the activities that you do or the assignments that you give, that you can adjust it because you know some of the students in your class a little bit better.